We have a comedic actress who has done stand-up all over the city. She is a regular performer with The Kates and Beast Woman. You can find her on rooftopcomedy.com, and she will be at Zany's May 19th. She is also 1/3 of She's Crafty, and the other 2/3 are right next to her. Chicago's all-female Beastie Boys tribute band. Be sure to see them May 4th, which will be just just after or just before our next event, our next show. Anyway, see them May 4th for MCA Day at Liars Club. Check their internet site for that, shescrafty.com. Put your hands together for Amy Sumpter. Before Amy reads, there were a couple people looking for seats, these two included. Feel free, there are still some around. Jump in. Oh, yes.
Hello. Boarding the ship seemed like a good idea at the time. Our ship was a 15-seat extended white van. Behind us, we pulled a trailer that carried our sleeping bags, tents, clothes, and anything else a 12-year-old Girl Scout would think to pack on a 16-day camping adventure to Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. There were 13 girls and only 2 adult chaperones. On the way there, we canoed through canyon walls that were 1,000 feet high. We saw purple sunsets in the Badlands and hiked to a petrified forest in the mountains. I also stepped on a mini cactus in Montana. I was wearing my Keds. It was 1989, and we were all wearing Keds. Let's be real, mine were the generic brand from Venture. And that needle went right through my shoe. Now, hormones were raging through our preteen bodies, and New Kids on the Block fueled every moment of that trip. I brought only a little bit of spending money for souvenirs, but I spent most of it on big boppers because Joey Joe was the centerfold. He was the cutest of New Kids on the Block, just so you know. His blue eyes were my beacon of hope when the other girls got cliquey. I didn't go to their school, which meant it got a bit lonely in Troop 59. I got into their troop because my mom was an old high school buddy with the co-leader, Peg, and my aunt lived in Peg's Girl Scout district. Yes, Girl Scouts have districts, and mine sucked. It was awful. It was arts and crafts central, like nursing home kind of stuff. All we ever did at meetings were make flippin' crafts or food that I now suspect was dinner for the leader's family, and watch DuckTales. Ooh. Yeah, I could still make a pretty good egg noodle from scratch, a flour out of a ribbon if I can remember. But we never went anywhere, and it got boring. And when my mom found out about Peg's troop, she signed me up using my aunt's address. We were so black ops. Peg's troop went on weekend trips to the city, and we stayed in a hotel. The new troop also went camping and skiing, and we learned how to tie knots. I can still do a square knot in my sleep, as well as the knot you use if you fall into a ravine and you need to be lifted out. I can't remember the name of this knot, but I can still do it. Take that, ribbon flower. Now, the new troop was fun, but at times it got super lonely. I was the outsider. They sometimes didn't get my sense of humor. Amateurs. And other times they were just downright bitches because they were 12. I had been with the troop for 2 years when we left for Wyoming. The night before our mountainous adventure, I laid awake for hours, nervous about what lay ahead, but also excited that the trip was finally happening. We had saved money for this trip for 2 years. We gave half our troop dues to the Wyoming Fund and sometimes our personal allowances. We sold Girl Scout cookies and below zero weather to pay for this excursion. We also got yelled at old ladies because inflation had happened and the cookies weren't 35 cents a box anymore. I made a promise that freezing day that I would support future Girl Scouts of America, and if I heard anybody complain about the price, I would kick a bitch. Well, I hate confrontation. I would think ill thoughts about them. Also, Girl Scout cookies rule. Just buy them, okay? Just buy them. At Peg's house the first morning of our trip, we arrived super early to load up the trailer, wave goodbye to our parents, and sail down the highway, headed to Minnesota for our first night. We waved at truckers, trying to get them to blow their air horns. We made a ton of bathroom breaks, and we listened to New Kids on the Block the whole way there. I'm shocked that cassette tape, yes, tape, didn't end up thrown out the window by an adult. God bless Girl Scout leaders. Our campsite was not far from a ranger station. We were right off the main road. A huge forest was on one side of us, and we had a river winding out of it, curving around our campsite. And it was chilly for July, and swimming would not be happening. We had gone skinny dipping the summer before on a camping trip, and we all wanted to do it again. Now, our other leader, Georgia, was an old hippie, and she didn't care if we got a little weird. The wind had picked up and was blowing some of the girls' tents toward the river. They forgot to stake them down first, and they rolled like giant bubbles toward the water. We giggled with excitement because it was the first night. We had freedom. Bedtimes were a suggestion. If we didn't bother Peg and Georgia, we were all good. Someone suggested that we sleep under the stars and not in our tents, to embrace nature, to feel the wind through our hair and have a naked parade at dusk. Yes, you heard me. We were young, dumb, and back then, Amy wasn't modest. We wrapped ourselves in sheets and we flashed the woods because no one was out there. We were all alone. Even the ranger was far enough away that he couldn't see anything. It was sky, river, woods, and Troop 59 hooting and hollering in a naked parade. And then the rain came because Mother Nature was being a dick. So we went back into our tents, we got dressed, and then we all went into one tent to tell ghost stories. Some of the girls started to get scared, wimps, and went back into their own tents. But most of us were cool enough to handle the tales that were being told. Basically, the other girls were all butchering the old Scholastic book classic scary stories to tell in the dark. I only told originals that my parents had told me. But something strange happened. Georgia started to yell, and we could hear honking, which sounded like from our van. It almost sounded like she was yelling at Peg. Now, Peg was a second mom to me, and I was protective of Peg, and her daughter Erin was my only real friend on the trip. Erin and I had history that went way back before I joined their Girl Scout troop. There was speculation amongst us that the leaders were in a fight, and even though we couldn't make out words, we knew something was up. And we thought they were fighting each other. So we decided to find out what was going on. Georgia sat in our van honking the horn in long bursts with the door open, and Peg was standing next to her looking out toward the road, yelling in the direction of the woods. It was getting dark. They didn't look like they were mad at each other, but something was off. They assured us that everything was all right. Go back to the tents and go to bed. We got a big day tomorrow. Activities are planned. We are not just driving. It started to rain a bit harder, and my tiredness from the night before caught up with me, so I went to bed. I was woken up by Georgia violently shaking me. Amy, wake up, wake up. We need to go back to the van. There's a really bad storm. Are you awake? And when I got back to the van, everyone was giggling at me. Apparently, Georgia had come into my tent 3 or 4 times. Each time I would respond to her and tell her I was awake. So she would head back to the van, only to realize I was not behind her. And then she would have to go back to my tent and do it all over again. I was the only one who was sleeping through the storm. Rain poured down and the van rocked just like a ship in the water. Lightning, like I have never seen before, ran across the dark sky, would light up the entire van like daylight. I can still see in my mind what the sky looked like with all of that electricity in it. It was sky and lightning for as far as we could see, and some of the girls were afraid and cried. And the storm didn't scare me. I thought it was peaceful. We watched it on, waited for the rain to let up. Georgia and Peg murmured to each other, and the rain pounded on the roof of the van. My eyes grew heavy with sleep. The rain was a lullaby that only I could hear, but I was woken up by a nervous throat clear from Peg. Some of the girls had to go to the bathroom, so we drove to a latrine near the campsite and hung out there for a while. I was tired and needed my bed. In my sleepiness, I accidentally let a toilet seat top fall and slam when I was leaving one of the stalls. Jenny, a real drama queen, yelled, "You did that on purpose! I'm scared!" And she started to cry. Sorry, it just slipped. But some of the other girls rushed to Jenny's side and consoled her, and I rolled my eyes at the wall. Jenny was also the one that cried the summer before when Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor came on the radio. Because it was Johnny and her song, you guys. It's Johnny and her song. I remember thinking back then, you're in 5th grade. Shut up. You don't have a song. I hated Jenny and how fake she was. I hated that the other girls didn't see it. I walked over to the corner of the bathroom where it didn't smell as bathroomy, and I held in tears. I was tired. I wanted a stupid song. Stupid Jenny. Stupid songs. Well, I really needed some New Kids on the Block right now to soothe me right now. But you didn't see me crying. You didn't see me complaining. I wanted to yell, "Hangin' Tough is my song, Jenny. Mine!" And I didn't do that. I wanted to go back to bed and away from the smell of the latrines and Jenny's awfulness. I really wanted my bed. But that wasn't an option. I needed to buck up or this trip that I had looked forward to for years was gonna suck. I walked over by the leaders. They were talking to each other again in whispers. Erin was over there and she whispered to me that she wanted to go to bed. And it felt good to hear that I wasn't alone. Some of the other girls were able to get Georgia and Peg to tell them what was planned for the next day. They usually kept it a surprise until the day of. Well, tomorrow, we set up for the Badlands. What are the Badlands? You'll see, they responded. Finally, after an hour or two, we went back to our tents. The next day, we sailed out of Minnesota to clear skies to continue on a trip that I still think about 20-some years later. And after we got home, Georgia and Peg hosted a barbecue with their parents to exchange photos and tell stories. Everyone laughed at the tale of me sleeping through the storm of all storms, and Georgia reenacted trying to wake me up. My mom laughed and said she does that to me every morning. I still do that every morning to my alarm clock. And then we all found out why the leaders were yelling that night. Not long after our naked parade, Georgia saw 2 men approaching our campsite and realized that they had been watching us. They went into the woods to get closer to our tents. And Georgia honked the horn to get the rangers' attention, and Peg started to yell. And somewhere between us leaving the tent to ask questions and the crazy storm, the men disappeared. I like to think something bigger than all of us was looking out for Troop 59 that night, keeping us safe by blowing in a huge storm to scare off a couple of creeps, but also having 2 leaders get us all into a van and then hiding us into a latrine for half of the night. God bless Girl Scout leaders.